Hey, it's Coach Reeves. Today we're going to try to get you ready for test 5.2. All right, so I'm going to work about 5 or 6 of the problems from the review sheet. You can match it up as we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to ask you to simplify. Okay, so we're going to ask you to factor the numerator, we're going to factor the denominator. Okay, at this top, I do not have a common denominator, so I'm going to need to factor using the box method. Okay, so we're going to go to the box method. I have 3k squared. I have a positive 20. When I multiply those two numbers together, that will give me a positive 60. Since it's a positive 60, we're going to add to find our combination, okay? And we need it to add up to 19. To make this quicker, long story short, we're going to use 4 times 15 because that will add up to 19, okay? But before we go too far, remember when you factor this, this says my signs are going to be the same. This says both of my signs will be minuses. So you're going to go to 2 parentheses, and remember that your signs will be subtraction signs or minus signs in the middle, okay? So we're going to use 4k. We're going to use 15k. Let's look at this, I have only a k in common. I have a 5 in common. Going up, I have a 3 and a k in common. And I have a 4 in common. So we're going to have k minus 5. We're going to have 3k minus 4 over, we need to factor this. We're going to have a greatest common factor. We have a greatest common factor of 2k. Okay? So we have, let's do this, 2k. And that's going to leave me with k minus 5 inside. So we have factored. You know that always the first step is to factor. And before you reduce, before you try to simplify, we need to determine our excluded values. Okay? So we're going to put the 2k equal to 0. Divide by 2. We're going to get k equals 0, and you're going to say, no, that's an excluded value. K cannot be equal to 0. And then we'll take our other variable, we'll say k minus 5. Set that equal to 0. Add 5. We're going to get k equals 5. And then we're going to put our slash through it, and we're going to say, no, k cannot be a positive 5. This problem, we will have 2 excluded values. And then once you find your excluded values, you are ready to reduce. In this case, my k minus 5s will reduce. And my simplified answer will be 3k minus 4 over 2k. So remember, find your excluded values first and then simplify. Okay? All right, let's try another problem. This is multiplying. Okay? So on multiplying, we're going to factor first. We're going to have a greatest common factor. We're going to say take out our 10. This is going to leave me with r minus 9. We're going to factor, we're going to have a greatest common factor of 20. And this is going to leave me with r minus 5. Here we still have another greatest common factor of 4 r squared. And that's going to leave me with r minus 5. In the denominator, we factor this into 2 parentheses. We know the signs are going to be different. One will be a plus sign, one will be a minus. This tells us the signs are going to be different. We're going to break down the r squared as r times r. And we're going to break down our negative 54. This back number is a negative 54. So that means we subtract to find our combination. And we're going to use 6 and 9. So when you subtract them, that'll give you a 3. I need to be a negative 3. So the 9 goes with the minus sign and the 6 goes with the plus sign. Now it's time to find our excluded values. In this situation, you need to tell me that r cannot be a positive 5. You're going to say that r cannot be a negative 6. And then you're going to say that r cannot be a positive 9. I kind of sped that up because I think you should know by now how to find your excluded values, okay? Now we're going to try to reduce. Now the thing about multiplying is you are allowed to reduce diagonally and vertically. So in this situation, I'm going to cancel r minus 9. That will cancel, okay? Look at this. I will cancel my r minus 5s. I will reduce my 10 and my 20. 10 goes into 10 one time. 10 goes into 20 two times. But look, this 4 is on the outside. So I can reduce the 4 and the 2. 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 4 two times. That will leave me with a 2r squared in the numerator. In the denominator, all I have left is r plus 6. You can put that in parentheses if you'd like, okay? So, here are my excluded values. This is my simplified answer after multiplying, okay? Let's keep going. This one says to divide. Remember, we don't divide fractions. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal or change this to multiplication and flip the fraction. But what I do need you to understand is how we're going to find our excluded values. Remember, when we find our excluded values, we will use this denominator, and this numerator. Okay, so we're going to use those. All right, before we get going too far, let's find our excluded values. You should tell me that x cannot equal a negative 4. X cannot equal a negative 6. X cannot equal. Now this may mess with some people. You need to be careful. If you're not sure, put it equal to 0. 7 minus x equals 0. Move the x to the other side. Plus x plus x. 7 equals x. And then say no. X cannot equal a positive 7. That's how we're doing it. So just don't guess. Make sure you do this correctly. Set it equal to 0. All right, so those are our excluded values. When you're doing a division problem, denominator, and numerator, you have to use all three to determine your excluded values. Okay? All right, so I'm going to factor this. When I factor this, I'm going to get 2 parentheses. I'm going to do it over here. 2 parentheses. Signs are going to be different. The bigger number gets that sign. So we're going to say a plus, a minus. We're going to break down the x squared as x times x. We're going to break down that negative 28. Okay? It's a negative 28, so we're going to subtract. And we're going to use 4 and 7. When you subtract them, you will get 3. So that's what we want. but we're going to get the bigger number needs to go with the negative, so we're going to put the 7 with the negative, and we're going to put the 4 with the plus sign. So we have factored the numerator. At the bottom, I have x plus 4. We're going to change this to multiplication. We're going to flip this fraction. We're going to say x plus 6. We're going to say 7 minus x. All right, so be careful now. Be careful. I need you to notice this. Real quick. This is a positive x. This is a negative x. This is a negative 7. This is a positive 7. Both signs are messed up. Both signs are the opposite. When that happens, we're going to ask you to factor out a negative 1. That will become a negative x. That will become a positive 7. Now, I did it to the top because we like the negative to be at the top most of the time. We usually don't like to leave it in the denominator. That's why I did it up top. Okay? Look what you have now. I have a negative x plus 7. I have a negative x and a positive 7. These can cancel. My x plus 4s can cancel. I'm left with a negative 1 times x plus 6 over, I don't have anything in the denominator. So what I have just left is, negative 1 times x plus 6. And I'm going to go ahead and guess your teacher's going to expect you to distribute the negative 1 and tell them that you're going to end up with a negative x minus 6 as your answer. Okay? Two things. Remember how to find your excluded values, all three places. Remember that you're going to change it to multiplication and flip your fraction. And be careful with this. Make sure that you factor out that negative 1 so your parentheses will match up. Okay? All right, let's keep going. Adding. To add, you're going to need a common denominator. In this situation, I'm going to factor out, well, I'm going to reduce first. You need to look at your problem to see if you can reduce. Look what we have in the first fraction. My a's can cancel. My 6 over 3 can reduce to a 2 over 1. That makes it a lot easier to find a common denominator. Because if I have a 1 at the bottom and 10a minus 2 at the bottom, obviously my denominator should be 10a minus 2. That's my common denominator. To get to 10a minus 2, I'm going to need to multiply times 10a minus 2. And when I distribute, that's going to give me 20a minus 4. In this fraction, I did not have to change anything, so I do not change anything with this numerator. I combine like terms. 20a plus 1a will give me 21a. A negative 4 plus 2 is a negative 2 over 10a minus 2. Now be careful. Remember the rules about simplifying. I am not allowed to reduce off the edges. This minus sign holds this together. This minus sign holds this together. You cannot reduce that. That would be your final answer. Okay? Let's keep going. So this one is subtract. Okay? So we're going to subtract. When we see this minus sign, I'm going to ask you to distribute that negative so we don't forget to do it at the end. And now we're trying to get a common denominator. I'm going to factor out, I have a 3 in common here. I have a 3, and that's going to leave me with 5x plus 3. Okay? Oh, look at this. Look at the first fraction. What did we notice? The x's will cancel. The x's are canceled. That's going to leave me with 2 over 3. So we're going to get a common denominator. We know for sure that we need to have a 3. We need to have a 3 outside of the fraction. Outside of the parentheses. And then we also need the 5x plus 3. So when this 3 is outside the parentheses and this 3 is outside the parentheses, you do not need 2 of them. 1 will take care of everything. All right? To get to make our denominators match, I would have to multiply times 5x plus 3. Let me erase that real quick, excuse me. So I'm going to multiply times 5x plus 3. When I distribute my 2, I get 10x plus 6. These denominators already match, so I do not have to change anything. This will stay a negative 6x plus 3. I combine like terms. 10x minus 6x is going to give me a 4x, a positive 6, and a positive 3 is going to give me a positive 9 over 3 parentheses 5x plus 3. And there it is. Okay, one more problem, maybe 2. Let's see what we have. Complex fraction. Now remember, we're going to take this one at a time, the top half and then the bottom half. So I'm going to ask you, don't even look at this guy yet. Save that guy to the very end, okay? So we're going to add, we're going to get a common denominator. In this case, I have a 2 and a 4 at the bottom, so my common denominator will be a 4. To make this denominator match that 4, we're going to have to multiply times 2, which will give me a 10. This is already a 4, so we don't have to change this. And when I add them together, I'm going to get x squared plus 10 over 4. There, we have added the top fraction. Now I'm going to ask you to look at the bottom half. So we're going to cover this up, and we're just going to look at the bottom half. Change colors real quick. So we're going to say, I'm going to ask you to change this to a plus sign and make that a negative 2. We're going to try to add these. We're going to say, I need to get a common denominator. I have a 4 and an x at the bottom, so my common denominator will be 4x. To make our denominators match, I'm going to have to multiply this times an x. And x times 5x will give me 5x squared. To make our denominators match, I'm going to have to multiply times 4. Negative 2 times 4 is a negative 8. And when I combine this, I'm going to get 5x squared minus 8 over 4x. Okay? So now we have to remember, this is a giant division sign. And we're not going to divide fractions. We are going to multiply times the reciprocal to flip the second guy. I cannot reduce this. I cannot reduce this, but I can reduce my 4's. My 4's will cancel. This will cancel. This will cancel. I am looking at x times x squared plus 10 over 5x squared And again, it depends on how your teacher wants you to write your answer. Do they want you to distribute the X or not? Okay? So this is one of almost everything you're going to see on the test. Okay? Actually, it is one of everything you'll see on the test. You need to practice. You need to do your review sheet. And it's okay to get stuck. Just ask us questions in the Zoom, or just email us and say, hey, Coach, can we set up something to where I can ask you some questions? Okay? But please practice so you'll be ready for the test so you can do well. Good luck.